Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fish Keeping. In today's video, we're going to be breeding some absolutely beautiful cherry barbs. So this video actually has taken me ages to film. This is actually future me talking right now. I'm going to be showing you literally everything you're going to need to know to breed your cherry barbs, how to set them up, the whole process with raising the fry until adults and then selling them. So without any further ado, let me throw you back to when I was actually catching these guys out and getting ready to breed them. So here are our cherry barbs. It took me quite a while to actually catch these guys out. They're really fast, but as you can see, we've got one male here, we've got another male in the back there, we've got this female here and another female here. Now, I did just want to give you a closer up look at them just so you can see how plump the females are. This one's obviously the most plump. That one at the back there isn't really too plump. So we'll see if we can get her up. She's actually not as washed out as the others either. You can see this female here is the one that's not too plump. I don't know if she has any eggs in her. I'm sure she would. I don't know if it'd be a massive spawn though. But yeah, she's a little bit washed out at the moment. Then we've got this female, which is really nice and plump. There's also like a lot of floaties in the water. I don't know what those are, but those are pretty gross. Anyway, let's see if we can get her close up. Come on. So you can sort of see her here. She's a little bit more plump than the others, and then the two males back here, they're really washed out at the moment because, you know, I just spent like 10 minutes trying to get them out of the aquarium. So yeah, here are our little cherry barbs. You can see they're very beautiful fish up close. I'm actually really excited to breed these guys again. I absolutely love breeding them. But before we get onto the setup, I do just want to quickly talk a little bit about how you can condition your females to be nice and plump like this and get your males ready to breed. Alright, so as for conditioning your fish, it's super easy, nothing to stress about, but it is definitely something you want to do before you actually breed your fish. So conditioning is basically just filling up your females, getting them nice and plump, fat, full of eggs, ready to breed, and also filling up your males, getting them ready to breed as well. So what you're going to want to do to condition your fish, and what I did to condition my cherry barbs, is you want to feed them a very high protein diet for about a week, maybe a few days before you actually plan on breeding them. And that high protein diet is going to help those females develop those eggs inside of them and get really nice and plump. It's really going to help you spawn your fish. It gets them in the mood. It makes them feel like there's plenty of resources around, so they want to be breeding. And obviously it helps, like I said, to fill up your females, get them nice and plump and full of eggs. So what I did is I fed my cherry barbs just flake food. Some fish are a little bit more picky when it comes to conditioning, but with my cherry barbs, I literally just fed them lots of flake food twice a day. I also mixed in a bit of frozen food and a bit of live food. You want to be careful. You don't want to feed strictly one thing, particularly dry food. That can bloat your fish and that can actually just kill them. So definitely not what you want to be doing before you're trying to breed them. But yeah, I did just quickly want to go over conditioning your fish. With the cherry barbs and lots of egg scattering fish, it is pretty simple to condition them. It's not a necessity. But with lots of your other fish, when you get into breeding a little bit more like difficult fish like dwarf cichlids and things like that, it's very important you want to condition those. But yeah, with that said, let's just jump straight back into the video and get on to setting up our cherry barbs. Alrighty, so we're down here on the floor now. I've got literally everything you're gonna need right here in front of me, so we'll go through it. First things first, I'll move all this stuff aside. So the first thing you're gonna need is a styrofoam box. You could also use like a bucket. You could use a tub like these ones behind me here. It just needs to be, you know, a nice little rectangle that can hold water. Usually if you buy these cherry barbs online, so if you bought fish from my website, I send them in styrofoam boxes like this. So if you're buying cherry barbs to breed, they should come in a styrofoam box that you can use. But if you can't get one like that, you know, these are about $3 online, or you can just go to like a fruit shop. Fruit shops usually have them and they can usually give them to you for free. So yeah, you'll need one of those. And this is basically what the water's gonna be going in. So this right here is just like a little tray. It's got holes in the bottom. So this is really important. You need a tray with holes in the bottom, and that's going to separate the parents from the eggs. So usually with these egg scattering fish, they'll spawn in like rocks or areas where the eggs can sort of fall down and just be safe. Just because the parents definitely go around and eat the eggs after they spawn. So yeah, separating them from the eggs is really important at getting a good spawn. So basically what's going to happen is this is going to go in your styrofoam box. You're going to fill it up with water, put your cherry barbs in the little tray section, and they're gonna spawn in there, and then the eggs are gonna fall through into the styrofoam box. Now, because of that, you do wanna prop this up, so you can either, you know, stick screws through the side, but I like to keep these boxes nice and not holy. So yeah, I put 4 little rocks like this in the bottom. They don't need to be big whatsoever, and that just gives me a little space to, you know, rest the tray on. That way there's a little bit of clearance between the styrofoam box and the bottom of the tray. And then the final thing you're gonna need is some sort of spawning medium. So I like to use spawning mops. I also like to use plants, so things like guppy grass, foxtail, java moss, those are great plants. You can also use things like cocoa fiber or other sort of spawning mediums like that. I've just got so many of these laying around my fish room, so I just throw a few of those in there. The more, the merrier. I might throw another one. I think I've got another one in here. So yeah, I've just got 3 spawning mops in there. Obviously, it depends how big you want your spawning mops. I like to have like pretty much no room for the fish to really swim around freely. I know that sounds bad, but when you give them so much room to spawn in, it really does just trigger them into spawning. And then we're gonna fill this up with water. You wanna make sure you have a lid. So I've got my lid somewhere. So a lid like this is absolutely vital. It's gonna make sure that your fish don't jump out. Sometimes when they're spawning, because they're in a confined space, they do like to jump out. So having a lid on there will prevent that. But yeah, now that we've got everything set up, this is literally all you're gonna need. Obviously, you're gonna need some water now. So I'm gonna fill this up with water. You can use, you know, aged tank water. You can use conditioned tap water. I don't really find it makes too much of a difference. I'm gonna be using conditioned tap water. And then yeah, I'll set that up. I'll put the water in, I'll condition it. Then we'll go ahead and throw in our cherry barbs. So yeah, now we've got this all set up, we've got our little cherry barbs here in this little yogurt container. So we'll add them in. You can see they're looking just a little bit stressed. They've been in here all day, so they'll be keen to get in. Now this water's pretty gross, so I'm actually gonna sort of strain them out. All right, here they go. All right, so now that those guys are in, we can just put on our little lid and leave them be. All right, so now we've got our little cherry barbs all set up in there. We're gonna leave them overnight. I don't think they'll breed tonight. They usually take around a day to fully settle in and get ready to spawn. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave them in here. We'll check tomorrow morning, obviously, to see if they have spawned, but like I said, I don't think they will. I guess we'll check in tomorrow morning and see how these guys are going. All right, so it's actually the next day now. We're back here with our little cherry barb tub. I haven't checked yet, so hopefully we do have a few eggs in there. I'm gonna film this on the phone just to make it a little bit easier. So here's our little tub here. I'm sorry about the light flickering. It's like this little Bunnings floodlight. I don't know why it does that. But yeah, we'll take a little look. Everything looks good. You can see we've got one cherry barb just sitting there, and then the rest are obviously just sort of hiding away. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put them in here while I, take it out. Now, usually what I like to do is I just shake out the spawning mops a little bit, just because sometimes if they spawn in there, eggs can get trapped. So you do just wanna shake those out. We'll drop one of them in there for them to hide in. You can see I threw a few plants in yesterday as well. I find that when you throw plants in there, usually it does trigger them to spawn a little bit. I forgot to mention that when we were setting it up, but you don't need much. It's just a little bit of greenery for them. I'll throw that in with our little guppies over here for now. All right, so we're actually missing one. Oh, I see her. She's stuck in the spawning mob. There we go. There's our 4 little cherry barbs. And it looks like they are actually a little bit skinnier. So you'll see that female looks a little bit skinnier. This one still looks a little bit plump. I'm not too sure if we're gonna have eggs, and if we do, it won't be too many. See if we've got any eggs. All right. Yeah, that is really good. We've got an absolutely huge spawn of eggs in here. So that's actually super exciting. You can see all those tiny little eggs. I'm not too sure if these are viable. Sometimes the females on their, you know, if you haven't bred them for a while, sometimes their first spawn isn't viable just because the eggs have been sitting in their stomach for a while. I don't know why, but it just looks like there's quite a bit of debris stuck on these eggs. Now, I'm going to get a little bit of light on here because I do actually want to show you something pretty cool. Alright, if you take a good look at the eggs, you'll actually notice they've almost got a little tinge of red to them, which actually makes them very easy to see, particularly on a white base like this. You can see, oh my goodness, how many do we have there? So it looks like they sort of just spawned around this side. There's not too many eggs over there. Now what I do actually want to check is the tray, because sometimes, you can get a few eggs just stuck to plastic. So I don't know how we're going to get those off. I don't know if they're adhered yet. Yeah, they are. Alright, so we're going to have to scrape those off. I've got a little syringe. I'm going to see if we can sort of, like, power wash them off. Hopefully it does work, but we'll give it a bit of a go. Yeah, that's working. So these eggs are pretty strong. You don't really have to worry about breaking them. I don't think I've ever really broken a fish egg in my life. They're extremely strong somehow. Alright, so that looks like we've got them all. If I haven't, then that's unlucky for those eggs, but we do have quite a large spawn down here, so it shouldn't really matter. Oh my goodness. I'm actually amazed at how many there are down there. There is so many eggs. Now, something that a lot of people may do is, you know, they may see all the eggs down here and they want to get them in a new little container, much smaller, easier to manage. That is where I think a lot of people go wrong. So we are going to be raising the fry completely in this. Obviously, once they get a little bit bigger, we'll have to move them into a bigger container. But for the first few weeks of their life, they're just going to be in this styrofoam box. It's so much easier to manage them when they're in, you know, the water that they were, I guess, laid in. So yeah, we're going to be leaving these guys in here. We'll take out these rocks for our next little setup. And then as for the final thing you need to do with the eggs here, I'm literally just going to throw in a little bit of plant. So it doesn't really matter what plant, but the reason you want to do this is because usually on these plants, there's a whole variety of little microorganisms that these firstborn cherry barbs can eat when they first hatch. Obviously, when these guys first hatch, they're not going to be big enough to eat, you know, baby brine shrimp and fry foods like that. So they are just going to have to rely on little microorganisms to fill them up. But yeah, now that we've got these guys all set, they look good. We're just going to chuck our little lid back on there. You obviously don't need your lid on now. All the work is done from the parents. And we're just going to leave that for a few days. So we'll obviously check back in when these guys start to develop and start to hatch. Alrighty, so I'm back in the fish room, and this morning I came in here and checked our little tub, and it looks like pretty much all of our eggs have started to hatch out, and there's actually a really big spawn in here. So it's pretty dark in my fish room at the moment, and we might not be able to see these fry, but bear with me while I try and locate some. There are literally hundreds in here. A lot of the times, there you go, you can just see one there. I don't know if it's focused. And the cool thing about these guys is they're actually all free swimming, which means I probably missed them the other day when they started developing. A lot of these egg scattering fish like Danios and Barbs, their fry actually hatch out really quick. So in about a day or so, you'd have some free swimming fry. So here's one right here as well. Let's see if we can get him. You just see there moving. I don't know why the camera's flickering like that. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, anyway, all of our fry have started to hatch out. Now, once they hatch out, these guys have obviously only hatched out overnight or this morning. So they're still very small and they're still absorbing their little yolk. So you don't really need to actively feed these guys with things like fry foods or, you know, baby brine shrimp. That will come in a few days. But what I like to do for, you know, the first 2, maybe 3 days of these guys being born is I get some of this. Now, this stuff right here is literally just gunk. So I've gone outside to my pond setups and I've gone ahead and collected some water. I've also collected some like algae stuff, and I mean, this soup looking thing right here is what you get. Now I'm gonna pour that in there, and what this is gonna provide the fry with is a bunch of microorganisms. So you can imagine all the little single cell organisms and microorganisms that are actually living in this algae. They obviously feed off the algae, and the algae gives them a good place to just sort of live, I guess. It may look like I've just dirtied up the water, and I sort of have, but this stuff will give your fry a massive amount of microorganisms for them to eat in the first few days of them hatching. And then, yeah, like I said, in about a day, maybe 2 days from now, we'll start feeding them baby brine shrimp. So I've got some cooking away back here. I always have baby brine shrimp cooking away in my fish room. But yeah, now that we've given them their little food here, we'll leave them, and I'll see you guys when I start feeding them some baby brine shrimp. All right, so it's been about a day or so since we last checked on our little cherry barbs here. Obviously, last time we checked on them, we actually threw in some of this algae and just this gross stuff to provide them a little bit of food. Now, they've gotten a little bit bigger and they're starting to really free swim, so you can probably see a few just zipping around down there. They're actually really fast. See if we can find one. There's one just there. You can just sort of see that little speck. There's actually two. So what we've got today is a little bit of brine shrimp. Now, this has been sitting around for a while, so there's a few little dead ones in there, unfortunately, but they should still work. Now, something really important when it comes to feeding these guys for the first couple of times, and this sort of applies for any fry, is that you need to make sure you are spreading the food around the container. So because they're very small, I mean, you can see this tub's probably like, I don't even know, like 500,000 times bigger than them. So if you put some food over here, it's gonna be very hard for a little fry over that side to get the food. So you wanna sprinkle it pretty much everywhere in the container, and you wanna give them quite a generous dose as well. They do need quite a lot of food to, you know, grow well. So I'm just gonna sprinkle that around. You can see I've got quite a bit in here. Might just do it this way. And now we'll just wait for a second and see if we can catch any fry having a bit of a feast. Oh, here we go, down here. There's a few fry there. They look to be eating. There's a few. Oh, there's quite a few over there. Sorry about this. I don't know why the camera's doing this right now, but that is very annoying. So some other things you could feed these guys, you could obviously use some fry food. I think the best fry food is baby brine shrimp. But yeah, now we're just gonna leave these guys. I'm gonna feed them probably 1 or 2 times every single day, baby brine shrimp only, for the next week or so. And then once they start putting on a little bit of size, I'll see you guys again and we'll move them into a little bit of a bigger container, and yeah, we'll just check on the progress of them. So yeah, I guess I'll see you guys when these little cherry barbs start to develop a little bit more. Alright, so we're back here in the fish room today. Obviously down here is where we keep all of our little cherry barbs. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of these guys in here. Look at them all just there. And today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving them out of this little styrofoam box into a bit of a bigger container so they can continue growing. We do definitely need to up the water volume. It gets pretty filthy in here pretty quickly at the moment. So that is a pretty good sign that they are ready to move into a bigger setup. I'm just so amazed how many there are in here. Like, look at all those, oh my goodness. So yeah, as for the setup we're gonna be moving these guys into, it's a lot bigger, it's just over here. So I haven't actually filled this all the way to the top. It's probably only 10 or 15 centimeters high. So when you are moving your fish from a smaller setup into a bigger setup, it's important that you do gradually increase the water volume, and that's because when they are this small, if you throw them in a 50-liter tub like this, it's gonna be very hard for them to find their food. So you put them in a smaller water volume to start with, and then just slowly each week add a little bit more water, and that'll just help them grow nice and steadily. So yeah, with that said, I guess we'll just jump straight in and move these guys into their new setup. Oh my goodness, there is literally hundreds and hundreds in there. Alright, let's see if we can take a bit of a closer look at these guys now that they're in their new setup. Alright, so now it doesn't look like we have as many in there, and that's just because there's so much more space. I mean, if you look there, there's still hundreds. So these guys are probably only maybe 3 or 4 weeks old. I've also got a little guppy in there somehow. I don't know how he's gotten in there, but I guess he'll just stay in there. So yeah, these guys are only about 3 to 4 weeks old. and they've already grown quite a substantial amount. Most of them are around the same sort of size, but there is, you know, obviously a few that are super small. There's also a few that are super massive. So usually those massive ones will outcompete the smaller ones. So at the moment, it's not really that big of an issue because they're all relatively the same size. But as they start growing a little bit and the big ones really start to get a lot bigger, I might have to separate them out just because they will, you know, outcompete the other ones, which are a lot smaller. Let's see if we can find one of the small ones I'm talking about. Like, there is some super small ones in here. So you'll see just there is an absolutely tiny one compared to all the rest around it there. But yeah, like I said, it shouldn't be too much of an issue at the moment. I'm feeding them lots and lots of brine shrimp twice a day, and that's part of the reason they're so orange, because their bellies are full of beautiful baby brine shrimp. But yeah, now we've moved these guys into here, I'm just gonna keep feeding them twice a day. I'll keep checking in with you guys when they start getting a little bit bigger. So yeah, I'll see you guys whenever our next check-in is. Alright, so we're back here in the fish room today, checking up on our cherry barbs. I don't even know how long it's been, to be honest. Probably like, I actually don't have a clue. But obviously last checkup, we put the fry into this bigger tub, and since we've done that, they've started to put on quite a bit of size. So you can probably see them all down there. They're getting relatively large. There actually is still like a baby guppy in there. So if we can find him, we can actually use him as a bit of a, there, you can sort of see him. So that's like just a regular sized baby guppy compared to them. So, you know, they're getting pretty big. They're all nice and orange, nice and full of baby brine shrimp. I've just been absolutely filling these guys up with baby brine shrimp. There's still just so many in there. It's just an absolutely massive spawn. They love sitting in like this little bunch of plants here, and you throw food over there and they just all come out. There's a few in there that are still pretty small, pretty shrimpy, but for the most part, most of them are sort of the same size, which is a really good sign. You obviously want all your fry to be around the same size. It means there's no sort of competition and stuff like that. But I think what I'm gonna do now is, obviously we're gonna leave them. I'm gonna keep feeding them how I've been for the past, you know, couple weeks. And the next checkup will actually be when these guys have been moved from this tank into their new aquarium. I've got a nice big aquarium behind me here where I'm gonna put these guys once they get big enough. So yeah, with that said, I guess I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks when these guys have gotten much, much bigger. Alright, so I'm super excited because today is the final check-in for the video. So you can see we've got our little cherry barbs right here. Obviously in the last check-in, actually I don't know if we did move them in here in the last check-in. I'm honestly not too sure, but as you can see, they look like actual cherry barbs now. There's heaps in there, not as many as there should be, and I'll get onto why that is a little bit later as well. But basically, all I did from our last checkup, I think the last checkup they were still in a tub over there. Basically, all I did is I just kept feeding them baby brine shrimp. I chucked them in here, and I had the water level about here. So usually when I put fry in a big tank like this, you don't want to fill the water all the way up, particularly in such a big tank. I mean, this is a 3 foot, maybe 4 foot aquarium. And if I just threw all those tiny fry in this as is, they wouldn't be able to find food or anything. So like I mentioned, when I put them in the tub, you want to start out at like a much lower water volume and then just slowly increase. That's why this hasn't been fully increased. The size they are now, they could definitely go in fully, like a full tank. I just haven't got around to doing it. But yeah, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna grab the camera, I'll bring it over here, and we'll take a bit of a closer look at these guys. They look absolutely awesome. So yeah, I'll do that now. All right, so here we are at our little cherry barb breeding tank. I'll see if I can actually quickly feed them. So these guys are actually feeding on flake food now, which is super important before you are gonna sell your fish. You wanna make sure they are feeding on flake food. Now, when I'm selling my fish, there's a few things I like to sort of keep in mind before I know they're ready to be sold. So number one, you wanna make sure you can sex them if they're obviously sexually dimorphic. So if you can usually tell the difference between sexes. You wanna make sure they are mature and sexable. So with these guys, obviously you can. You can see we've got a nice male there, another male there, female there, female there, female there. There's really no issue sexing these guys at all. You also want to make sure they're obviously a decent size. So these guys are probably a little bit on the small side, but I have found that cherry barbs do sell better when they are smaller. I think that's just because people want to have them in their aquarium for longer. So obviously a younger fish is going to last longer than an older fish. So I like to sell my fish at a decent size. Obviously this one here, would not be getting sold. It does have a bit of a crooked back, but just pretend it doesn't have a crooked back. This size would not be sold anyway. You can see it's so much smaller than these guys. That brings me to my next point. You want to make sure they don't have any crooked backs or anything. So this guy obviously won't be sold. I probably will keep him. It does look like his back could probably straighten out. I don't know why I'm calling it a he. It is definitely a girl. And then obviously, like I mentioned before, you also want to make sure they are feeding on proper fish food. So if you can see here, I've just got a little bit of this flake food. That's what I was feeding them before. You want to make sure they are feeding on dry foods like this. So obviously there is an exception for aquarium fish that do strictly eat live foods and baby brine shrimp, things like that. Obviously those can be sold eating baby brine shrimp. For any other sort of fish that can typically eat dry food diet, you want to make sure they are eating a dry food diet before you sell them. So yeah, those are the main things I like to, you know, sort of double check before I sell any aquarium fish. As for why there's not many of these cherry barbs left, I have actually sold them. So here in my fish room, I sell fish through my website, aussiefishkeeping.com. I also sell them privately on like Gumtree. So I was actually selling some other fish, and two people actually came in at separate times and they both saw these cherry barbs down here and they absolutely loved them. So they decided to buy some. I think I sold them for about $3 to $5 each. So that's a pretty good price, I think. I mean, I think it's a fair price. They're usually sold for a little bit more in shops, and I usually like to sell my fish for a little bit cheaper. I want to make sure everybody can get some fish to keep in their aquarium. Here goes my dog again. But yeah, with that said, here's a final look at our cherry barbs. Absolutely gorgeous fish, one of my favorite fish to breed, and definitely one of the easiest fish to breed. So that is actually gonna bring us to the end of today's video. I really enjoyed filming this video. It was definitely one of my favorite videos to film so far. It really goes to show you can pretty much breed fish with anything you have laying around your home. Obviously this setup was super easy. Some fish would use the same setup, some are a little bit more difficult, but for a fish like the cherry barbs, they're so easy to breed. It didn't take me long either, so I think it's May now, and I started this project in, I think, January, so it's taken 4 months. No, it hasn't, it's taken 5 months, and I've already sold heaps of them. So it does show just how quickly you can make profit from breeding fish. I don't know if I mentioned already as well, but these guys have actually spawned for me already. So a few of these guys have. So I'll pop up a video of that now. They're in a tub over there, the same tub these ones were actually in. And it was another massive spawn. So yeah, as for these final ones in here, I think there's probably about 15 max. I'll probably try and keep them all and just have them as a bit of a backup breeding colony. Unfortunately, the parents of these guys did actually jump out of their aquarium. So if you remember, it was this aquarium here, and I was doing a water change, left the top off, and they just jumped out, which was like absolutely devastating. They were absolutely awesome fish. But luckily enough, we already had a massive spawn of these guys. So, I mean, I was upset, but at least we've got plenty more fish to carry on their legacy. But yeah, with that said, thank you all so much for sticking around to the end. It was an awesome video. I want to film many more videos like this. I think the old style videos I used to do, I'm just gonna get rid of. They don't do as well, and I just prefer filming these videos. So yeah, there'll definitely be more breeding videos, more videos like this in the future. But yeah, thank you all so much for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this video helped you guys out a lot, and I'll see you all in that next video. So here are our cherry barbs. It took me quite a while to actually catch these guys out. They're really fast, but if you can't get one like that, you know, these are about $3 online, or you